he knew I streamed. That wasn't the secret. I told him early on, before things even got serious, sitting across from him in a quiet bar, holding a glass of wine I wasn't really tasting. I told him I worked online, that I ran a channel and that I did a mix of content, some lifestyle, some commentary, some intimacy-adjacent stuff. He raised an eyebrow, asked what that meant. I said it was mostly talking, storytelling, late-night voice, soft vibe, kind of like ASMR, but more personal. Sometimes flirty, sometimes playful. Nothing too wild. I didn't label it. And he didn't push. He said it didn't bother him. Said he respected the hustle. Said it was cool I had an audience. I nodded, smiled, pretended to believe that was the end of it. But even in that moment, I could tell he didn't fully understand what I meant. And I didn't explain. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I wasn't sure how to say out loud that the person I was online didn't exactly match the one sitting across from him. It's strange, having two selves. The one who does the laundry, makes the coffee, folds into someone else's arms at night. And the one who sits alone in a room, under warm light, speaking softly into a camera like it's the only thing that really hears her. That version of me, the one who streams. She's not fake. She's just distilled, smoothed out, calibrated. I know exactly how I look from that angle. I know how my voice sounds when it drops just a little. I know how to pause between sentences, how to let silence stretch until someone on the other end types something desperate just to break it. It's not porn. It's not explicit. But it's not innocent either. I learned how to ride the line. At first, when we started dating, I kept it clean. Just solo streams. Just voice. Just suggestions. I'd sit at my desk while he was in the other room, headphones on, gaming, or half asleep watching a movie. He liked that I had a creative outlet. Liked that I made money doing something digital. He never asked to watch. I never offered. We kept that part of me in its own little box. And honestly, that worked. For a while. The first time I streamed from our shared apartment, I told him I had a live Q&A. I remember he leaned over the back of the couch, kissed my shoulder, said, "Knock 'em dead," and went back to his show. I turned off the hallway light, closed the bedroom door, set up the ring light, brushed my hair in the mirror without thinking too hard about it, and slid into the chair like I was stepping into another body. The chat lit up right away. I wore a cropped hoodie and nothing under it. You couldn't see much. That was the point. It was always about the suggestion, the what if, the possibility of more. That night I read stories, whispered through old internet confessions, let the camera linger while I sipped tea too slowly. Every now and then I'd laugh, low and soft, like I was laughing at something only I knew. The messages poured in. Tips, emojis, questions I pretended not to see. I said goodnight after 45 minutes, turned everything off, pulled on a sweatshirt, and joined him on the couch like nothing had happened. We ordered food, watched a show, fell asleep. I didn't feel guilty, not even a little, because it wasn't cheating, not in any traditional sense. I hadn't touched anyone. I hadn't even said anything overtly sexual, but still I felt the line shift under my feet. Just a little. Like the floor had tilted 1 degree and I couldn't quite tell which way I was leaning. Over time, I streamed more. Once a week became 3 times. I said it was growing, that it was picking up traction, and he was proud. He told his friends I was kinda famous online. I laughed when he said that. He had no idea how many men had memorized the way I crossed my legs or smiled into the lens. Most of the time, I stayed solo. But not always. I'd invite viewers to send questions, dares, play games with me. The more I gave, the more they came back. I never lied to them. But I didn't exactly tell the truth either. There was a thrill in it. In being wanted by hundreds of eyes I didn't have to live with. I could turn them off anytime I wanted, and they'd still come back. Hungry, loyal, anonymous. There was a night, I remember it clearly, when I finished a stream and didn't want to come back out of the room. He was waiting in the kitchen, cutting vegetables, humming off key to some playlist. I watched him from the hallway. He looked like someone I used to know. Still sweet, still solid, still him. But I felt like I was returning to a version of my life that had started to feel dull. I hated myself for thinking that. He hadn't changed. I had. I started fantasizing about being caught. Not fully, not exposed, but just enough. A close call. A near miss. His voice through the door while I was still in character. A slip of tone. A mic left on. Something that would force the worlds to touch. But that never happened. He respected my space, gave me privacy, trusted me completely. That's the part that really hurt later. He was the kind of man who never checked my phone, never asked questions, never made me feel watched. And that made it so much easier to lie by omission, because there was no resistance, no suspicion, only room to move. At some point, the chat changed. People started asking if I'd ever consider doing a stream with someone. You'd be even better with company. Imagine you and a guest, just once. I laughed it off, said I was a solo act, that I liked the quiet, that I liked being in control. But late at night, I would think about it. About what it would feel like to have someone there. Not necessarily to do anything. Just to be present. To share the heat. To feed off each other's energy. I told myself I wouldn't cross that line. I'd never let it go that far. But the thing is, when you live in two lives long enough, the boundary between them stops feeling real. It becomes fog. It becomes suggestion. And suggestions are easy to follow when the lights are low and you've already started slipping. His name was Nate, and he came in quiet. Not with a move, not with a line, just with attention. That's what got me. The way he watched, not like he wanted something, but like he was already holding it. He wasn't a friend exactly, more like a background character from someone else's life. A guy I met once at a shoot through another streamer. He worked in lighting, tech, behind the scenes. Tall, a little too still, the kind of face you'd remember even if you never spoke to him. I barely said 10 words to him that day, but I remembered him walking past me, nodding once like we had a secret. We didn't. Not yet. It started the way these things always do now. A message. Casual. Quick. I'd streamed late that night. Alone. Nothing crazy. Just me in a sweatshirt and shorts, hair tied up, sipping tea and whispering through late-night questions. The chat had been warm, flirty, a little on edge. Someone tipped me and said, "Love the new lighting. Softer shadows, better detail." I smiled, thanked them, but my stomach dropped. Because I knew who it was. The tone. The phrasing. I clicked the username and there it was. Generic name, blank profile, but the donation tag gave it away. It wasn't the amount. It was the note. Perfect tone. You finally found it. I messaged him privately. That was you, wasn't it? He replied a minute later. You always this easy to spot when you're being watched? It should have annoyed me. The arrogance. But instead, I stared at the screen and felt the air shift. I typed back, "I'm not used to people watching quietly." He said, "I don't like interrupting something when it's working." We started talking more after that. Nothing romantic, nothing sexual. Just that strange in-between space where people let their guards down because the stakes feel low. We talked about gear, filters, sound quality. He asked about my audience, what they liked, what got them going, what bored them. I told him how much work it was, keeping people engaged when they all wanted something slightly different. How sometimes I finished a stream and felt like I'd been wrung out from pretending I wanted to be touched by every man on earth. He asked if it ever felt real. I said it did. Sometimes. With the right mood, the right song, the right stranger. I told him I liked the space between suggestion and delivery, that the closer I got without crossing the line, the more they paid attention. He said that made sense. Said it was like lighting. You never flood the whole room. You leave shadows. You let the audience fill them in. I don't know when it started feeling personal. Maybe the night he asked if I ever got lonely doing it alone. Maybe when I told him yes, and that I'd never said that out loud. Maybe when he sent me a photo of his setup and said, "If you ever want help dialing in your sound, I'm around." I saved that photo. Not for the equipment, for the reflection in the glass. His face, half turned, not smiling, not posing. Just looking. Steady. I told my boyfriend I was working on a new segment. More interaction, maybe bringing in guests. He nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. Told me to go for it. Said, "People love your voice. Let them hear more of it." I wanted to tell him the irony, that the version of me people loved was never the one who spoke to him. The first time Nate came over, I didn't clean the apartment. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted it to feel real, lived in, like I wasn't dressing up for anything, like I hadn't thought about it. But I had. I wore soft clothes, old shorts, no bra. I kept the lights warm, not bright. I told him we'd just test sound, maybe set up a 2-mic track for the next stream. He brought equipment. We plugged it in, calibrated everything. Sat on the couch and played back sample clips, listening for feedback and breath noise. At one point, I made a joke. Something small. Something about how I'd never had a guest before. He looked at me and said, "I'm not really a guest. I'm just what's already in the room." That hit me harder than anything else. He didn't make a move, didn't sit too close, didn't touch me. But I felt my body lean toward him anyway. And that was the first time I realized I wasn't lonely when he was around. Even if we weren't speaking. He left after midnight. No hug, no goodbye kiss. Just a nod and a glance and a door closing softly. And I stood in the living room, arms crossed over my chest, breathing too fast, wondering how something so quiet could take up that much space inside me. That night, I lay in bed next to my boyfriend and tried to remember what it felt like to want him. Not sexually, just emotionally. To crave his voice, his presence, his approval. But I couldn't summon it. Not in the same way. And when he rolled over and pulled me into him, whispering, "Love you," I said it back out of reflex. I don't think I meant it. Not that night. Not fully. We didn't plan it. Not out loud. I never said, "Let's go live together," and he never asked. It just happened. One message turned into 3. One visit turned into 2. Then one night, I looked at the numbers and said, "Tonight's quiet. Might as well play with something different." And he said, "Let's." It wasn't an event. No countdown, no announcement. I didn't wear anything special. Just a ribbed tank and loose sweatpants. He showed up 20 minutes early and brought me bubble tea like it was any other night. We joked while setting up the lighting, played a few test clips, adjusted the gain, calibrated the angle. At one point, I looked at him and said, "You don't even seem nervous." He said, "I'm not the one they're here for." And we went live. It started slow. It always does. Viewers trickled in, dropped a few comments, said hi, asked if it was a tech test. I smiled, said, kind of. Introduced him as a friend who works in lighting. A few people in the chat recognized him from past mentions. One asked, "Is this your man?" I laughed, said, "Nope, just back up." That answer didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. The question shifted quickly. Is he single? How do you know each other? Damn, this got interesting fast. I brushed them off, kept things light. We played a dumb Q&A game someone dropped in chat, made fun of our terrible childhood photos, debated whether cereal was soup. But even in the laughter, something was happening. A closeness, a heat, a rhythm that had nothing to do with the camera. He sat beside me, not touching, not even looking too long. But he didn't need to. He knew exactly how to fill a room, not with volume, but with presence. Every time I leaned forward, I could feel him near. Every time I spoke, his eyes didn't move. He watched me like I was the only voice he could hear. And that kind of attention, it does something. It makes you feel like you're glowing. The chat noticed. Of course they did. Y'all got chemistry. Can someone open a window in here? Blink twice if he's staying over. I rolled my eyes, smiled, but didn't deny it. Not because I wanted to confirm anything, but because pretending not to feel what I felt would have been a lie my face couldn't hold. At one point, we read viewer confessions. One of them said, "I'm in love with my best friend's boyfriend." Nate looked over at me. Not smug, not flirty, just steady. I asked him what he thought of that. He said, "Sometimes we fall for people we're not supposed to. Doesn't make it unreal, just inconvenient." I don't think I breathed for 10 full seconds after that. The stream went on for an hour. It wasn't spicy, not visually, not explicitly, but it didn't need to be. The tension was doing all the work. Two bodies close, not touching. Two voices syncing in tone and timing. The power of what almost is. When we ended the stream, the chat exploded with messages. "Bring him back. Best episode yet. You two have serious energy." I said maybe, smiled, closed the app. The silence after ending a stream always feels strange, like shutting the door on a crowd of people you invited into your bedroom. The light shifts, the air cools, you become someone else again. But that night, I didn't feel like coming back down. Nate stood slowly, stretched, checked his phone. "I should probably head out," he said. I nodded, walked him to the door. He paused, hand on the knob, then turned and looked at me like he was about to say something honest. But instead he said, "You handled that well. You've got presence." I laughed. Too fast. Then he added, "You don't need anyone on screen with you, but it's better when you're not pretending to be alone." That landed like a stone in my chest. He left. I didn't go to bed. I sat on the floor in my studio, lights still on, bare feet cold against the rug. I read through the comments again, watched a clip someone had already screen recorded and uploaded. It was just a moment. Me turning toward him, laughing, brushing my hair off my neck. But in that 1 second freeze frame, I looked like a woman caught mid-crave. And I couldn't deny it anymore. The performance wasn't what turned me on. He was. He came over 3 days later. No setup, no excuse. Just a message. "You streaming tonight?" I said yes. He said, "Need help with lighting?" I didn't respond for 15 minutes, just stared at the screen, heart beating slow and steady like a drum before the drop. Then I typed, "Yeah, if you're free." When he arrived, I was already dressed. Not for stream, For him, subtle but intentional. A fitted shirt I hadn't worn on camera before, soft fabric, deep neckline, no bra, hair tied low, not too neat, makeup just enough to glow under soft light. I told myself it was for the lens, for color correction. But that was a lie I wasn't bothering to believe anymore. He didn't comment, just walked in, glanced at the setup, adjusted one panel, moved a diffuser, tested the gain. I stood close. Too close. He didn't move away. His hand brushed mine once while rewiring a cable. I didn't flinch. Neither did he. We didn't go live that night. The camera was on, but not streaming. We were doing a test run. That's what I told him. That's what I kept calling it, even as we sat down in front of it, even as I hit record, just to see how it looked. We sat side by side on the floor, backs against the wall. I leaned into him, casually, like I wasn't measuring the weight of his thigh next to mine, or watching his fingers when he adjusted the mic, or breathing in the faint scent of his skin. Something clean and warm and unfamiliar. The conversation was nothing. That's what made it dangerous. We talked about lighting, about how the shadow fell on my shoulder, about how viewers respond better to natural eye contact. I looked at him. He looked back. We didn't look away. And then there was a silence. Not awkward. Not searching. Just full. Like the space between notes in a song where the emotion lives. He didn't ask. He just leaned in. Slow. Careful. As if he knew I needed one last second to stop it. I didn't. His mouth on mine was warm. Still. Not urgent. Not demanding. Just a press. A confirmation, like he already knew the answer and this was just the proof. When he pulled back, I didn't speak. I traced the line of his jaw with my thumb. He closed his eyes. I kissed him again. The camera light blinked quietly in the corner of the screen. Still recording. He lifted me into his lap like it was something we'd done 100 times. My legs around his waist, his hands under my shirt, breath in my ear. Heartbeat synced to mine. I lost track of time. I lost track of the line. I didn't care. We didn't go all the way. But we went far enough. Far enough that when I walked into the bathroom after, I couldn't meet my own eyes in the mirror. Far enough that I forgot I was ever performing for anyone else. When he left, he didn't say anything. Just looked at me one more time before stepping into the hallway. No goodbye. No, next time. He knew better than to name what we were doing. I sat on the floor after he was gone, legs stretched out, shirt half buttoned, camera light still blinking. I watched the footage. Not to edit it, just to see my own face. To see what I looked like when I wasn't pretending. And what scared me most wasn't the guilt. It was how happy I looked. I didn't know he'd seen it. Not right away. Things felt normal. That's what scared me. He was kind, quiet, attentive in the way people are when they're already halfway gone. We had dinner like usual. We talked about nothing, the weather, groceries, a new show he wanted to start. He asked how streaming was going. I said fine. He smiled and said, "You've been working hard." I should have felt safe. Instead, my stomach turned cold. He never used to ask about my streams. The next day I came home late, said I stayed out with a friend. It wasn't a lie. I just didn't say which friend. He was on the couch, laptop open, soft music playing in the background. I walked past him toward the kitchen, paused for water. He didn't look up. But something about his stillness made me glance back. And that's when I saw it. The screen was open. One of my old streams. Not live. Not edited. just raw. Not the one we posted. The other one. The one I never meant for anyone to see. The one where the light blinked in the corner and I didn't turn it off. It was paused. Frame perfect. My legs across Nate's lap. My fingers on the edge of his shirt. My face half turned in soft shadow, smiling like I had no idea I was being watched. He didn't say anything, just stared at it, not blinking, not breathing. His hand still on the trackpad. I said his name. He didn't look at me. I stepped forward. The air between us was heavy, like walking through water. I was going to tell you, I said, and it came out wrong, weak, pathetic, because I wasn't. He closed the laptop slowly, stood, walked to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, closed it, opened the fridge, looked inside like he was searching for something that would make this moment easier to survive. I waited. He came back and leaned against the counter, arms folded. "How long?" he asked. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. He didn't push, just nodded like he already had the number in his head. He just wanted to hear if I'd say it too. "Was it just him?" he asked. I paused again. Not because I had to lie, because I couldn't make the word come out. "Yes," I finally whispered. He nodded again, calm, detached, like someone ticking boxes off a form. Then, "Were you ever going to tell me?" I almost said yes. I almost said I was trying to find the right moment. But there are no right moments, just ones you let pass while hoping the truth will disappear before it gets heavy enough to crash through the floor. "No," I said. He looked down at his shoes, exhaled once through his nose, then looked back up at me. And his voice didn't shake. That's what undid me. "You told me everything was just performance," he said. "You said none of it was real, that it was content. I believed you." I nodded because I remembered. I'd said those exact words once, curled into him on a Sunday afternoon, when he'd asked, gently, not accusatory, if the men online ever meant anything to me. I said no. I said it was just projection, just fantasy. That what we had was real. And now he'd seen me smile like I was home on another man's lap. He walked to the coat rack, took down his jacket, wallet, keys. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I just wish you'd been honest sooner. It would have hurt less." He turned to leave, then paused, hand on the door. "I loved you," he said, not looking at me. And I think maybe that was the mistake. I thought I loved all of you, but I didn't even know who you were when the camera was on. Then he left. No yelling, no begging, no slammed doors, just absence. And I stood there, alone, not crying, not speaking, with a laptop full of faces who would have paid to watch it all happen again. And none of them would ever know what it really cost. I didn't stream for a month after he left. I kept telling people I was taking a break, resetting, rebranding, all the phrases creators use when the truth is too raw to package. The truth was simpler. I couldn't look into the lens without seeing his face in the dark, his eyes on that frozen frame. I couldn't hit record without hearing his voice say, "I loved you." Past tense. Like a period after a sentence you thought might keep going. At first, it felt like grief, but it wasn't clean enough to be grief. It was messier. Guilt layered over ego, longing tangled in shame. I didn't just miss him. I missed who I was when I was still being chosen by someone who didn't know better. I stopped replying to Nate. He messaged a few times. Once just a question mark. Once, "Was it worth it?" I didn't answer, not because I was angry, but because I didn't have one. I deleted the recording, the raw file, the backups, the copy he had, every version I could find. But it didn't change anything. The real version still lived in my head. Not just the footage, but the feeling. The exact way I tilted my head when he touched my thigh. The sound I made when I forgot we were recording. The expression on my face when I thought no one would ever see it. I started waking up early, even though I didn't have to. Sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor like something would come out of it. I stopped wearing the robe he gave me. Threw it in the back of the closet. The sleeves still smelled like his laundry soap. That hurt more than it should have. People in my chat started to notice the silence. I went live again, eventually, but it wasn't the same. I didn't flirt. Didn't smile the same way. I didn't dress for the camera. Just lit a candle, turned on the mic, and talked. No topics. No structure. Just whatever came out. Most nights I just read. Old stories, anonymous letters, quiet heartbreaks from people who never got caught, who lived with what they did, buried in the parts of themselves they never showed anyone. Some of the viewers left. Some stayed. One night, someone typed, "You sound different lately. Quieter." I read it twice. Then replied, "I think I'm just telling the truth now." And maybe I was. That version of me, the one who built herself on the screen, who measured her power in tips and glances and unread messages, she didn't survive what I did. She was burned out of me in one frame. I miss her sometimes. Not because she was good, but because she was certain. She always knew how to fill the silence. Now, I sit with it. I don't chase it away. I let it grow. Sometimes I wonder what I'd say to him if we ever crossed paths again. I imagine bumping into him at the grocery store, at a concert, somewhere casual. I imagine saying, "I'm sorry," and meaning it. Not to make him stay, not to undo what happened, but just to show that something inside me still breaks in his absence. But that's a fantasy too. He's not coming back. And even if he did, he wouldn't recognize the woman sitting here now. She still talks into the dark, but not because she wants to be seen, only because she wants to feel like someone's listening.